Podcast. I'm Austin, aka G.I. Joe.
What's going on, everybody? This is Ryan, aka, I don't know, whatever the fuck you want to call me.
First off, we'll get to the story of the week. A man set a new world record after completing 60 naked skydives in the space of 24 hours. Ryan Canoff revealed that he contacted the Guinness Book of World Records about setting the record for new jumps and was told that he would have his own brand new record as long as he completed 25 jumps in the time frame.
Here's my thing about that is, how the fuck are they going to say he's going to have his own new record for 25 jumps? Who is just going up there just like, I'm just going to jump fucking butt naked out of the plane? Because, look, here's the thing. It does not take long to hit terminal velocity, right? So if I'm not mistaken, like terminal velocity for a human being is like 125 miles an hour straight down. I don't want my dick and balls slapping together at 125 miles an hour over and over again. That just does not sound comfortable.
Your stomach's going to be hurting for like the next week after
You can't even land. As soon as you land, all you're going to do is hunch over and vomit on your feet. Like...
He explained the idea came up to raise money for mental health or different mental health charities after the recent passing of a friend due to mental health concerns. I don't know. I'm guessing committed suicide or something along those lines.
It sounds like he had mental health issues if he's wanting to jump butt fucking naked out of a plane.
Well, it's actually tradition for skydivers to skydive nude on their 100th jump.
Oh, shit.
I did not know that.
I didn't know that either.
He told a local TV station, "My friend we lost to mental health issues was close enough that he talked about it all the time, and he didn't make it. So I'm out here for him and a lot of other people that we lost."
Just, look, all kudos to this guy, okay? That's all I'm saying, is if he's out there and he's jumping and he's doing all this to try and raise awareness and everything, it's a great way. It's a great way to raise awareness, but does he have to be just balls to the sky? Like,
if I skydived 60 times butt-ass naked, dude, I'd have like an innie. You know how cold it would be up there?
Oh my god, no, look, it's ridiculously cold. I do a lot of hiking. I've stood at the top of a lot of mountains, and it's cold enough there. I can't imagine jumping out of a plane. Like, your sack's going up inside you. Like, fact of the matter. Like, you got no dick. You're jumping out, there's no dick sticking out.
With a nub.
Yeah.
I guess that fits good with the topic we're doing today. You know, something falling out of the sky.
Yeah, pretty much, I guess. Jesus Christ, though.
Alright, the Urban Dictionary word of the week this week. Panamanian petting zoo.
Panamanian petting zoo. Look, I don't know where I'm coming at with that one. If I had to guess what a Panamanian petting zoo is. So, Panama, they're known for their canal. So, it's got something to do with maybe petting somebody's asshole. That's all I can guess. It's definitely got to do with ass play.
Alright. Panamanian petting zoo. When one forces one's partner to pick the nuts and corn out of a bowel movement, the partner then presents the nuts and corns in a cup or a dish. One then tosses the nuts and corns onto the bed where the partner eats them like a goat or other typical petting zoo animal, commonly preceded by a Kentucky Klondike bar. Do you know what a Kentucky Klondike bar is?
Jesus Christ. I would imagine... if you're talking about spreading that shit out there like feed at a petting zoo, it's got to be just eating it whole hog, man. Taking a full, nutty, corny shit and just taking a chow out of it.
A Kentucky Klondike bar is the act of freezing a bowel movement and then sexually penetrating another with the frozen bowel movement.
Hey, look, different strokes for different folks. Like, I'm not going to lie. In high school, I dated a girl that used to like to have me shoved, you know, like the round ice cubes with the hole through them that you get from the store. She used to like for me to shove those up her ass. And you know, different strokes for different folks.
I mean, that's one thing. But, you know, a Panamanian petting zoo, you know, picking shit out of fucking corn. I don't even understand how you proceed that by a Kentucky Klondike bar. So what, you... freeze the shit in a condom, and then you fuck them with it until it unthaws, and then you fucking make them pick out the fucking corn and nuts, and then...
Look, you're assuming that they're even using a condom, okay? At this point, if this is the kind of sexual act you're into, I'm highly, highly certain that a prophylactic is not even in the question. Like, you're just raw dogging turd into ass at this point.
Oh, God.
Just frozen cold turd ass.
This week, we're going to be talking about UFOs and some of the recent releases from the Pentagon. We're actually supposed to be getting more. June 25th is the supposed date, so hopefully
we'll
find
see
out
how that goes. How many times did they push back the release of the documents on the JFK assassination?
They blocked. Who was it? Trump?
Mm-hmm.
The FBI blocked Trump on releasing some of the JFK stuff. So I guess we'll have to wait another 70 years.
Right, well, all this UFO shit, right? Like, Clinton was supposed to have gotten all that released back in his day. And they kept blocking him. Like, Clinton legitimately wanted all the documents released. I can clearly remember in my youth watching an interview with Bill Clinton on the lawn of the White House where a member of the press was asking him what his thoughts were on the UFO phenomenon. And he straight up said, like, I want to know. Like, even as president, there are certain things that they don't tell me. And if I had even the slightest bit of information on UFOs, I would release that because I want to know.
Yeah, hell yeah. I mean, if I was the president, that'd be one of the top 3 questions I ask.
Absolutely. I'd want to know about the UFOs. I want to know about the nuclear codes. And I'd want to know what Marilyn Monroe's pussy looked like, because there's definitely pictures of that.
Oh, they probably got a picture taped in one of the drawers whenever you open it.
Right. Like right at JFK's desk. You just open it up, bam, there's some fucking Marilyn Monroe nudes, and you just close it up, and you're like, okay, cool, I'm president now. That's the initiation.
Oh, no, I think the 3 things I'd want to know is about the UFOs. I'd want to know, I'd say, about secret military programs that, like, there's a bunch of conspiracies on. I'll probably ask about a few of those. I want to know about the moon landing.
Oh, no, we're not even going to get into the moon landing now. No, the moon landing, that's... As a card carrying nerd, moon landing, that's my baby.
Do you believe we landed on the moon?
I do believe we landed on the moon. I do. And we'll get into the statistics on that later when we start talking about some of these UFO conspiracies, because there's some facts and figures out there that kind of lead me to believe we definitely did it.
There's 2 ways I look at it. We either didn't land on the moon, or we have went a lot farther than they're willing to admit. Like, we've already been to Mars or other planets. I just don't trust that if we've traveled out from the world that we've only went to the moon. I think we've gone a lot farther than that.
Well, we'll find out in the years to come. I mean, we got that Mars mission coming up, right? So,
I mean, you also got to think, if they had that type of rockets in the 60s, late 60s, dude, you really think that in, 60 years, over 60 years, that we haven't come up with some new shit?
Look, all I'm saying is I went to space camp as a kid, right? Growing up in Miami, it was all right there at my disposal. Went to space camp. Actually got trained on how to use the lunar lander and everything else. And it's really not that complicated. As long as you know basic geometry, you can kind of use those controls. And it's really not that complicated. If you had the right people in the right place at the right time with the technology that they had and the controls that they had, I think you could do it.
Oh, yeah.
I feel like me and some of my middle school compadres, under the right circumstances, probably could have landed on the moon. Maybe not make it back. But we totally would have landed.
The Pentagon, like I said, has been releasing more information the past few months about UFOs. They're known as UAPs. Unidentified aerial phenomenon. Because I guess everybody had the bad taste with the UFO, thinking people were like fucking crazy.
It's got a huge like a bad stigma. Yeah.
They have recently released 3 videos of different UAPs from military planes, like, I guess, fighter jets, stuff like that. Videos that show stuff that's fucking insane. One of the guys talks about it looks like a ping pong ball at, like, how fast it's shooting from one point to another, and they don't know what the fuck it is. They're finally coming out and saying, hey, yeah, there's some shit in the sky that we don't know what the fuck it is.
Even then, if you watch that Navy video that got released, the best thing to me is the fact that the pilot refers to his other pilot as bro, where he's just like, bro, I don't know what this is. And it's
bro,
just like,
what the fuck is this? And a lot of it was actually recorded by infrared cameras. So you really don't know their actual view of it, whether it was daytime or nighttime. But I'm guessing if you're in the sky, and you're not normally going to see shit up there.
Well, here's the thing. So that can be subjective. So a little bit of history going back, right? And so if we want to talk about the history of UFOs in general, it's not as new as a lot of people think it is. Everybody thinks, Flash Gordon, 1950s, space, Isaac Asimov and all this. Yeah. But it goes way farther back than that. If you really look into, especially ancient Hindu culture, they are constantly talking about in their religious scripts about these giant battles that took place in the sky among people from other worlds. They don't necessarily refer to them as aliens or people from other planets, but just people from other realities that are waging war in the sky above them in these ships called Virmana, which were these anti-gravitational crafts, and they go into a lot of detail in their religious texts about how these things function and everything else. And it's sounds a lot like UFOs. Yeah. And if you really want to get technical, there is an ancient Greek story called, literally, A True Story, is what it translates to in English. And it was written by a 2nd century Greek author named Lucian of Samosata. And it directly references people from another planet piloting crafts to come to Earth to interact with us. That's the first instance in history of someone literally referring to somebody that grew up on another planet coming here, like what we would consider an alien proper. Yeah. And then, you go into things like the Betty and Barney Hill incident in 1961, right? The first UFO abduction in northern Connecticut, where this couple is traveling home and they get abducted, and it takes 2 days, almost a 24-hour period from the time that they're abducted to the time they get dropped back off on the roadside in Connecticut. And that's where that whole classic, gray alien being on a medical table, getting probed, getting stuff implanted, losing time, everything. That's where all of that comes from, is from that original abduction. And then that whole narrative has just been regurgitated over years and years and years and years. And we don't really encounter proper UFOs until you get to... So, ironically, it's literally around the first time that human beings are coming to North America, right? So, on March 1st in 1639... the governor of Massachusetts, John Winthrop, actually writes in his journal about an instance where him and a friend of his were canoeing through the swamp outside of the Massachusetts colony and saw a bright light in the sky. And the light was doing, and he doesn't refer to it as an angel, which you would think most people in the 1600s would have referred to a bright light in the sky. He doesn't refer to it as anything holy. He literally just responds to it in his journal as a bright light. And he says that it's doing all the classic things that we think of a UFO to do, right? Darting from here to there in the sky, traveling miles of distance in a blink of an eye. He actually refers to it as something that seems to leave him alone and travel far north and almost fade out of view, and then pops back in from time to time to kind of keep an eye on him as he felt. And so that whole darting about, stopping on a dime, moving across the sky, that's that classic UFO thing. And then even more modern times, in June 24th of 1947, you have the private pilot Kenneth Arnold, who spots a craft, a thing outside of his single prop engine airplane. And he was the first one to actually coin the term a flying saucer. He actually refers to a string of about 9 ships all together in dot formation, almost like flying geese, that were disc-shaped, that jumped about the sky, broke formation, reformed formation. He even claimed that by his estimations, that they were going about 1,200 miles an hour at a time when most airplanes couldn't break 100 miles an hour. So that's really saying something. the idea of a UFO or a flying saucer or anything like that really broke into America's kind of zeitgeist in 1947. Like, that's really when it starts.
In 2017, one of the pilots who saw one of the unidentified objects in 2004 said that they moved in ways he could not explain. As I got close to it, it rapidly accelerated south and disappeared in less than 2 seconds. And this is actually a retired Navy pilot that had been doing this a very long time. He pretty much states that's like a ping pong ball bouncing off the wall. And it would hit one way and then go another way. The Pentagon has also previously studied recordings of aerial encounters with unknown objects as part of a shuttered classified program that was launched at the behest of former Senator Harry Reid of Nevada. The program was launched in 2007 and ended in 2012, according to the Pentagon, because they assessed that there were higher priorities that needed funding because, you know, a lot of people that believe in UFOs, people assume they're fucking psychotic, which, I mean, really, I personally don't think you would be, but a lot of people I know over the years think that anybody that believes in fucking aliens, extraterrestrial, or that we're being visited by something, think you're fucking crazy. And it's bad stigma for a lot of people because they don't believe you. I think it's stupid that somebody wouldn't believe somebody over that, because you gotta think they've had this going back thousands of years. I mean, even on some cave paintings, you've seen that they have drawings of stuff on the walls in caves that depict some similar type of UFO or something that, I guess at the time, I mean, hell, you gotta think.
The visitor from the sky.
They didn't have any type of electricity. They didn't have any type of light besides fire. I mean, because you got to think this is thousands of years ago. They ain't going to know what the fuck it is. And even thousands of years ago, they're seeing this stuff from thousands of years ago on the walls that are depicting the same stuff people are seeing today.
Yeah, but even then, if you think about it, I mean, how much different are we from our ancestors 1,000 years ago, right? Like, as a core example, I'm sure you've heard of the Battle of Los Angeles,
yes.
Right? So, you know, that started on February 25th of 1942, right? Like, right in the middle of World War II, directly after the bombing of Pearl Harbor and everything else. So, all of our West Coast defenses are set up off the West Coast, obviously, because they're trying to prevent any kind of Japanese aircraft carriers, submarines, anything like that, making contact with the West Coast. On the evening of February 25th, all of a sudden, there's a random object that hits our newly developed radar system, and it throws everybody into a panic. So the entire National Guard division in Los Angeles starts firing wildly into the sky at what they claimed were darting balls of light that were dashing across the sky over the west coast of California. And they shot thousands and thousands of rounds into the sky trying to bring down these objects. There were dozens of civilians and almost 100 military personnel that were injured in this battle against unknown assailants from the sky. Never to be determined what they were. And they 100% weren't Japanese aircraft because no downed craft was ever found. You know, decades of diving off the West Coast never produced anything. But as far as the entire state of California is concerned, there were balls of light in the sky that were attacking Los Angeles.
It sounds like some shit out of a movie.
It really does sound like something. Actually, they did make a movie. I think, what was it, 2016? 2015?
It was somewhere in the mid 2010s.
Yeah. Terrible movie, by the way.
Yes. Lou Elizondo, a former Pentagon official who ran the program to investigate the aerial phenomenon, has told the Post that he had seen videos of UFOs. It was a holy shit moment. Oh my God, it's real. Well, crap, now we have to do something about it, he said, describing the moment that they realized they were real. Elizondo, who ran the Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program from 2010 to 2017, said that he had access to the Pentagon data on UFOs that shocked him. He said that they interviewed eyewitnesses in the military who encountered the flying objects nearly every day. So they were seeing them all the time. He also said that the data he looked at showed objects traveling 60 miles in 5 seconds, which, if you do the math on it, it's about 43,200 miles an hour. And that is fucking insane.
So, a lot of this comes out of World War II. And I'm sure everybody listening is familiar with the term gremlin, right?
Yeah.
So the term gremlin is actually a bastardization of an old German word, but in World War II, most aircraft pilots reported at least one incident of a gremlin attack or another. And what that basically boils down to is they would, during bombing raids or aerial dogfights, they would have weird mechanical failures in their planes, or they would see small creatures, essentially, pulling panels off of their plane. They would encounter them inside the cockpits or inside the engineering housings of the plane, inside the bomb bays, dismantling things, inspecting parts, and nobody could ever explain exactly what that was. As far as the military and the Air Force was ever concerned, it was just the stress of war playing tricks on the mind. But even to this day, surviving World War II veterans that experience these things swear that they saw beings that were not human inspecting or manipulating the planes that they were flying in during the war. Now, whether or not that's genuinely something supernatural or that actually plays in with the UFO phenomenon that appeared out of nowhere in the 40s and 50s, I mean, who knows?
In another incident, the U.S. Navy allegedly recorded a swarm of craft reduce their altitude by 80,000 feet within 1 second in unison without damaging or anything before they all just darted off. I think it said there was 9 different objects and they just all went down in altitude at the same time in the snap of a finger. And to fall 80,000 feet in a second, that's a big fucking deal. That is several miles of just falling in 1 second. It's hard to think about that.
Dude, the G's alone that you would sustain in that kind of maneuver
would kill you.
Absolutely insane. Yeah. I mean, the average human being can't survive. Well, I don't want to say can't survive, but can't handle more than 6 G's, right?
No.
Usually more than 6 G's, you're going to pass out. So if you're talking 10, 11 G's, that's phenomenal.
Even the most trained pilots can't handle more than, 10, 11 Gs at most. And that's these people that fly these fighter jets and stuff that have to make these crazy ass maneuvers. And I mean, you got to think on a roller coaster, you only feel a few Gs.
1 to 2 Gs.
And that ain't shit. Just imagine, okay, you're going 100 miles an hour on a roller coaster. Now imagine how fast you'd have to be going to drop 80,000 feet in 1 second. There's no telling the G-force on that. It would probably crush a normal human being about how fast
it would drop. And then, you got these science fiction shows that find their way around it, right? Like Star Trek is notorious for the inertial dampeners, right? If you go back and watch old Star Trek shows, they're always talking about the inertial dampeners are out, so we can't make these maneuvers because if you're traveling at a certain rate of speed, regardless of your environment, if all of a sudden you're going to bank a maneuver, you have to have some way to mitigate those G-forces or you're literally crushed against the bulkhead. There's nothing you can do.
Yeah. Another interesting thing. I know we were talking about the report that's supposed to be coming out June 25th, which will actually be after we release, or it'll be before we release this podcast. It also says there's a poll that was taken by people in the Senate, and on the survey, it asked Republicans and Democrats if they believe these objects were extraterrestrial or anything like that. And 30% of Republicans agree that there is extraterrestrial life out there. 32% of Democrats assume that there are extraterrestrial flying objects. And then also 33% believe that some UFOs are of extraterrestrial origin. And then 60% believe all UFO sightings can be explained by human activity or natural phenomena. And then 7% said there was no opinion. Which, I mean, I actually thought it was a little high to be 30% coming from them.
I mean, you'd be surprised, though. You gotta think, a lot of the Senate, these are all guys in their 60s and 70s, right? Mm-hmm. So a lot of them are the people that grew up on the Buck Rogers TV shows and Flash Gordon and they grew up in the zeitgeist of UFOs and flying saucers. They grew up hearing stories about, Orson Welles' War of the Worlds and everything else. That's in their wheelhouse. They grew up on that. Even if they don't want to admit it at their core, they probably feel pretty confident that there is something messing with us.
Now, on another poll, 75% of the respondents suspect that life in some form exists somewhere in the universe, which, I mean, I guess technically they already found that on, what was it, Mars? They found bacteria.
They're suspecting that there might have been. There's this big thing going on right now where it's like it might have been something that we accidentally contaminated the Martian soil with. Like maybe the sterilization processes on the current rover weren't as good as they should have been.
No.
And they're still analyzing to see if that happened, if that's true or not. So
they actually believe that Mars used to be pretty much like Earth.
Absolutely. Well, it had liquid ocean, it had an atmosphere and everything else. But whether or not that atmosphere and everything else was around long enough for life to develop, that's the question.
But a lot of people don't realize exactly how big the universe is. And it's hard to explain to somebody because they just don't understand. It is so big, it's hard to even understand.
You mind if I try to explain
I'll let you give a shot. I mean, because people don't realize, like, our sun is a grain of sand in the world compared to how big the universe is.
So I'll just put it this way. So every time you walk outside and you are hit by sunlight, that sunlight takes 8 minutes to leave the sun and get to you. But that light took 180,000 years to leave the center of the sun to its surface because of the well of gravity, and then another 8 minutes to get to you. That's just the sunlight you see every day. The universe itself, as we recognize it now, is 14.3 billion light years across.
And
that
they
means
they say that still might not even be complete.
That's not even complete. That's just the observable universe. And what the observable universe means is that is the maximum amount of distance that we can look out at, because that's the longest amount of time that we've had for any kind of light to leave any source in the universe and actually make it here. Now, that's the whole thing where it's like if I look 14.3 billion light years out distance across the universe, I'm actually looking 14.3 billion light years back in time because that light left that long ago. So we don't actually know if the universe is bigger than that or how much bigger than that it actually is, but that's it. That's as much as we will ever be able to see. Even if the human race lasts for another billion years, then that means all we'll ever be able to see is 15.3 billion light years out. No. And we'll never be able to see beyond that. So to think that we are alone in that kind of absolutely vast and expansive void is absolutely insane. I mean, the law of probability alone says that we should not be alone. No. I mean, then you get into little like complications like the Drake equation that kind of like debunks the fact that we are alone in the universe, where it's like, if, the math adds up that there should be millions and millions of intelligent species out there in the universe, but we've never made contact with any of them yet. So it's one of those things where it's like, okay, well then where are they? No. Like if the math says they should be there, but we've never encountered them, well, then where are they at?
And the thing is, as big as the universe is, it could take forever to get there. You gotta think, our planet has only had life for
about 3 billion years.
Yeah,
because we're 4.6. We're 4.6 billion years old as a planet.
And the true intelligence is less than true intelligence. I'm not talking about like what they had back in the day. I'm talking about like the true state of technology where we could actually be capable of producing some stuff to find somebody else has barely been around for
100 years.
Not even 100 years. Yeah. And out of 14 billion light years, and we are just now getting it. So even if it was a billion light years away, which, I mean, over 14 billion light years isn't a huge thing, but even at a billion years or a billion light years away, that's at the speed of light. We're not even capable, or that we know of reaching the speed of light. So it's going to be kind of hard unless there is a more intelligent life form out there that can travel faster than the speed of light, because there really isn't nothing we can do at this time to do it.
So are you familiar with Stephen Hawking's viewpoint on all this.
Yes.
So Stephen Hawking believes that if we were ever to encounter any kind of extraterrestrial life, that they wouldn't even be organic, that they would be fully synthetic, that they would be machines. And the reason he believes that is the fact that organic evolution can only take you so far. You can only achieve so much organically.
Yeah.
And we're already, as a species, moving towards transhumanism. You already have people out there with artificial limbs, artificial organs, and everything else. It's only a matter of time before we start basically replacing all of our inefficiencies as a biological entity with synthetic creations. So more efficient synthetic hearts, more efficient synthetic livers, more sufficient everything, until we can create computers that are complicated enough to replace the human brain.
Pretty much like, what's that old cartoon where your brain was in the dude's brain was in a jar on top of
like
his head?
in the Ninja Turtles and stuff?
Yeah. It's pretty much going to be like that, but your whole body is going to be a robot except your brain.
Yeah, exactly. And the thing is that any machine is infinitely upgradable. So it's like, not only are you immortal, but as technology advances, you can increase your potential. So that is the future. So to be completely honest, when people talk about like, oh, I got abducted by gray aliens and everything else, realistically, it doesn't stand to reason that you would actually encounter anything organic, that it would be a machine. You're more likely to encounter the Terminator than you are E.T.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's just, it just doesn't make sense. On the simple fact that the amount of distance that you would have to travel intergalactically, if you were a machine that didn't age, then you would actually be able to reach your destination within your lifetime. But if you're organic, then you're talking multiple generations before you get wherever you're going.
That's like just to get out of our galaxy.
It's 120,000 light years just to reach one of the extra arms.
Yeah. So,
I mean, it's ridiculous.
Just to get out of our galaxy alone, you would have to have, even if we could achieve the speed of light, you would have to have several generations on the aircraft just to achieve it.
It's absolutely insane. And then obviously you have things like, warp technology, if that's ever possible, to be able to like fold space and time around yourself to be able to move faster than light and etc. But who knows if any of that's even ever going to be achievable in our technology, or if anybody else has ever achieved that. And even if they have, well, then where are they?
The way I look at it, I believe at some point we do have some type of technology moving in that direction. We may not be able to move quite at the speed of light yet, but the way I look at it, you got to think we're breaking the sound barrier in the
1930s.
Yeah, 1930, 1940s. And, we didn't even find out about that until, the 60s? So just think about the time gap. That was 20 years, okay? Well, that was almost 100 years ago, 80, 90 years ago. So if we can achieve that much technology by then, because when was the first flight?
Like 1910.
I was going to say, if you can achieve going from just being able to get some shit in the air to fly around in 1910 to being able to break the sound barriers 20 years later, just imagine how far we have actually come, even though we may not know about it, how far we would have come if the government actually told us what was going on.
Well, hell, we probably would have traveled the speed of light by now if it was beneficial to warfare. Because think about it, if the first time we put a plane in the sky was in 1910, well, by 1917 was the first time we strapped a machine gun onto the front of one to be able to engage in warfare, right? And that's what progressed us in flight, was the fact that like, oh, we can kill other people with this.
Let us find a planet that's like straight fucking oil. I guarantee you we'll be there in a week.
Right. It's that whole thing where it's like, oh, Jupiter's moon of Io has oil. Knock, knock. Here comes freedom.
You see that planet over there? I think they need to be freed.
They need freedom. Yeah, it's ridiculous. Here's another thing about the whole are we visited by aliens and everything else. Like everybody's familiar with like Derek Von Daniker's books like Chariot of the Gods, right?
Yeah.
Like saying that we got visited by aliens back in ancient times and everything else, which is a little condescending to say that ancient man couldn't figure out how to stack a bunch of shit on top of a bunch of other shit just to make it really tall, right? Like you're talking thousands of years of progression to make this, to say that a human being, as smart as human beings realistically are, to say that they couldn't be like, hey, I can take all of this shit and I can stack it on top of more shit and then make a mountain out of the shit that I'm stacking on top of other shit.
No.
It has to be aliens. It's a little condescending.
I mean, yeah, but they also, with the pyramids, there's so many different things with them that they say at the time didn't fit with human technology at the time.
Which is ludicrous. It's ludicrous, right? Because like they point out that it's like, oh, look, there are pyramids in Egypt, and there's pyramids in Central America and South America, and there's pyramids in Indonesia and the Philippines and in China. And it's like, right, it's a mountain. They built an artificial mountain. That's all they did. To think that ancient man couldn't look in the distance and see a mountain and say, hey, I could do that.
Yeah.
To say that they couldn't think of that or accomplish it without help is ludicrous.
Yeah, it really is, because especially at the time, I mean, look at all the other statues and shit they have. You know they had the power to do it. They had more slave power than ever. So, I mean, you had the manpower to do it. I mean, yeah, it may have been hard to move a couple ton rock here and there, but
they'd have figured out a way to do it.
Roll it on fucking logs. I mean, it's not that hard to figure out.
Yeah, like they would have done it. And the thing is everybody is so predisposed with exactly how they did it that's what's throwing the gum in the cog, right? Like they're saying like, oh, well, I don't know exactly how they did it, so they couldn't possibly have. And it's like, well, maybe it was a mixture of a whole bunch of different shit, and they just put it all together, and it wasn't just one simplified answer. They were just like, I'm going to take this shit, and I'm going to stack it on this shit, and whatever works for me at the time, that's how I'm going to stack this shit on this other shit.
I'm not saying it couldn't be aliens, but it could be humans, too.
Yeah, it could definitely be humans. Well, my thing is like, with the whole alien thing, right? Like, what was it? Ridley Scott just came out with that movie not too long ago, Prometheus, right?
Yeah.
And the whole premise of that was that these ancient aliens came and they created us by accident because their DNA ended up getting lost in the oceans and blah, blah, blah. That whole panspermia thing.
No.
But it's like, if aliens were visiting us thousands of years ago and creating our culture, and then now they're just kind of like hanging out and being like, oh, what are they doing this week? Oh, what are they doing tomorrow?
It's their own fucking TV show.
Yeah, like that makes no fucking sense at all. Like to say that they're just going to set the wheels in motion and then just totally back off. Like, who does that? Nobody does that.
No.
And maybe I'm anthropomorphizing them with like human intuition and stuff like that. But even then, I think like if you're going to go out of your way to create an entire race of people or something, you're going to do a little bit more than just pop in like every decade or so to just be a dick and like freak out some pilots and fly off.
Let's see what these fucks are doing. But honestly, I mean, in my opinion, they could still be studying us because I guess they see how violent we are. I mean, honestly, compared to a lot of extraterrestrial out there, we probably are violent. Because, I mean, a lot of them are probably smart enough to realize, hey, we don't need to be fighting over stupid shit like oil.
Yeah,
nukes.
A totally antiquated energy source.
Yeah, I mean, they have their own... I mean, I'm not saying they don't fight. I mean, I'm sure they've been at war with something at some point.
Well, the Hindus are right, man. They go to war all the time.
It's crazy to think about because there are so many possibilities with ET in general because the universe is so fucking big. Just like I was saying earlier, whenever people realize, even get a taste of how big the universe is, if you do not believe there is nothing out there...
It's a waste of space, man. It's a waste of space to think there's nothing else out there.
The only way you don't think there is nothing out there is if you don't have a grasp on how big the universe could possibly be. Now, a grain of sand, a grain of salt, whatever the hell you want to look at. Take that. That is our sun. The world is the universe compared to that. And that's still not even a comparable size. And if you think about that, how much bigger is the sun than Earth? It's like 250...
It's, you can fit like 100 million Earths or something like that inside.
So, I mean, you really don't know. Because our sun is one of the smallest suns in the universe.
Yeah, it's a pretty mediocre sized star.
And there are stars that are millions of times bigger than our sun. So it's kind of impossible for nothing to be out there if you can take a grasp of the size of the universe. I mean, it's idiotic. I'm not going to say idiot. I'll cut that out.
No, that's pretty idiotic. No, put it in there. If you genuinely think like we're totally alone in the vast infiniteness of the universe, honestly, and I'm just going to take a hot take and say it, you're fucking stupid. Because there's just too much out there. Like, the law of probability alone says that there's got to be something else out there. Like, just random chance statistics say there's got to be something else out there. Well, what's your opinion on whether or not the government is covering it up? That's the big question, right?
Well, see, that's another thing. I feel like the government has been more lenient the past few years on it. I believe originally they didn't know what the fuck it was, and they have been trying to cover it up ever since Roswell, maybe even before or after Roswell. I don't know how I feel about that.
Well, so here's my take on it, right? So you got Roswell, and you got the Betty Martin Hill incident and everything else, right? So the Air Force in 1947 basically says, okay, let's try and figure out what this is. We've been getting reports of flying saucers and cigar-shaped craft. Let's see if it's an actual threat to United States airspace. Now, you're talking 1947, so it's the birth of the Cold War, essentially. So realistically, they're more concerned as to whether or not that's Russia.
Yeah,
the Soviet Union, whether or not that's them fucking with us. And so they start up this thing called Project Sign. Right?
No.
And Project Sign is to investigate UFOs and everything else. And it's run by this Dr. Jacques Vallesco, right? And he genuinely really didn't care. He was a scientist and he wanted to genuinely investigate this stuff, but the Air Force was kind of keeping him down and was telling him, they made him a mouthpiece, essentially, and wanted him to just kind of blurt out these sound bites to try and make things go away. So, like, when you watch shows like The X-Files and stuff like that, and you hear, Fox Mulder get all exacerbated about, like, well, the government's just trying to pass it off as swamp gas and stuff like that. That's Vallesco, right? So he's going in front of the national news and he's saying these things at the request of the United States Air Force. And even he's dissatisfied with the stuff that he's having to tell the general public. And these reports that he's putting out are why so many people think that there's a cover-up. Because it's like, well, why would you give these half-assed responses and everything else if there's actually something going on? But the fact of the matter is that all throughout Project Sign, they couldn't validate anything. Most of the reports that they were getting, it was kooks or crazy people. And even the ones that they were getting from, like, valid pilots and, like, respectable eyewitnesses could kind of be explained away by natural phenomenon or natural tests that were going on, right? So a lot of these kind of fell in and around Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, which is where they reverse engineered a lot of aircrafts that they got from World War I, World War II, Vietnam, etc. I mean, half of all UFO reports from the 1950s up until the 1970s were weather balloons, U-2 spy planes going up. Like, they were, the Air Force has admitted, like, no, this was us, this was us, this was us, this was us.
And now they're finally just now starting to say, hey, no, there's some shit. We don't know what the fuck this is.
Right, but a lot of that didn't come till years later, right? Yeah. So it's like Project Sign gets shut down. And then the Air Force appoints a new general to take over. They turn that into Project Grudge. And it's named appropriately because everybody involved was like, this is bullshit. We don't need to be investigating this.
It's a waste of time.
It's a waste of time. Nobody's actually looking into it legitimately. And which kind of gives a little bit, it takes away some of the credence from, like, conspiracy theorists because, like, literally there's nothing to hide because even the military was like, this is fucking dumb. And so it's like they're not hiding anything because they're not actually even finding anything to hide. They're like, this is worthless. Like, the only reason you got assigned to Project Grudge was if you were pissing off your superior officers. Like, nobody gave a shit. They were half-assing all the investigations. And it wasn't until much later when it got shut down and turned into Project Blue Book that any kind of actual reporting was being done, and they were genuinely during Project Blue Book, which didn't even get shut down until the 90s.
Officially.
Officially. They went out and actually took eyewitness accounts and they studied different sightings and tried to apply some science to it and tried to figure out what it was. And even at the end of the day, even though Dr. Valeska was a skeptic when he first started, by the time he got done, he wrote a book in 2004 or 2005 about Project Blue Book and everything else and all of his investigations. And he kind of did a 180 and he was like, look, I can't validate any of the claims, but there's a lot of them that I just can't explain away. Yeah. I can't. I'm not going to say they were, and I'm not going to say they weren't, but yeah, there was some stuff I couldn't explain.
Yeah. And honestly, that's going to be one of the biggest things we're going to find out, hopefully, before this podcast gets released. And we'll end up doing another episode on UAPs in the future, but we will find out, hopefully, we'll find out a decent amount on June 25th, 2021.
I hope so.
I was going to say, we won't find out everything we want to know, but maybe we'll get a clearer picture. Hopefully in the next 5 years, maybe we'll get a visit.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, look, worst case scenario is, right, they're like, oh, well, this incident in 1992, that was the, A-17 stealth fighter. That's what you were seeing, was us running tests with this. Or, they got that supposedly secret Aurora project where it's the fighter plane that can travel at like Mach 8 or more. And it's like, oh yeah, all this stuff they were seeing where all of a sudden it was here and then it appeared over here. That was just it turning on its jets. And because it was traveling so fast, It looked like it was doing this, that, and the other. Who knows? Maybe it'll be down to earth stuff, or maybe they'll continue to say like, hey, we don't know. I'll say this much, and I'm sure, Austin, you can agree with me on this, is as somebody that has worked for the federal government, they are the most incompetent group of assholes known to man.
Yes.
And everyone that we've ever encountered in our careers with the federal government only got to their positions by kissing a lot of ass and just playing by the rules. I didn't meet a commanding officer that was worth a damn. They just knew how to say yes sir, no sir, and pass bucks along. To think that there would be enough people in high enough positions in the government to be able to keep some kind of global conspiracy of UFOs under wraps without some dumbass accidentally leaking that in some way that would have been easily detectable seems really unlikely.
Well, that goes back to the whole Bob Lazar thing. Bob Lazar has so much damn shit that he claims to have seen at Area 51, and nobody can vouch for him. Everybody pretty much thinks he's a lunatic, which, I mean, honestly, he probably was. Because, I mean, he owned, a brothel.
Oh, yeah.
He had his own fucking brothel.
Yeah.
And I mean, honestly, if you have something like that, you're not going to be able to get a government clearance. I'm sorry.
No, absolutely not. I mean, the dude lived in a damn RV in the middle of the day. Like, he was all like, I live off the grid by choice. And it's like, sure you do.
Again, hopefully in the next week we'll find out more information, and we'll probably end up doing another podcast on the new stuff that comes out, because
I would be absolutely ecstatic if something came out to validate anything.
Yeah. I mean, the government's only going to release a little bit. Like, they're trying to make it into this huge release that's going to happen. But chances are it's just going to be filler.
Yeah. It'll probably just end up being like the JFK releases where it's like, hey, we'll give you a couple of little snippets, but then we're still going to redact everything and keep it locked up for another 20 years. And
anyways, you got anything else you want to add before we shut this one down?
The only thing I would really like to add to any of this is the fact that UFOs, right? Unidentified flying objects, things seen in the sky. You got things like the incident over Arizona. Then you have the incident over New Mexico, where you have thousands and thousands of eyewitnesses tracking these formations and everything else, right? So my only problem is that eyewitness accounts without video documentation talk about crazy maneuvers and things moving all over the sky, etc. Now, we have, in 1950, which was the original peak for all of this, you would have about 100 sightings worldwide a year. That all peaked in about 2015 when there were like 9,000 sightings worldwide. But then cell phone cameras got better. More and more people had cell phones and everything else. I don't know about the rest of you out there, but hell, I didn't even get my first cell phone until probably like 2013, 2014, right?
Yeah.
Just because it just wasn't worth it for me to have it. But as more and more people have them, the sightings have gone back down. And anytime you look at any of this footage that people put out there where they're like, oh, I saw aliens, it's just a triangle in the sky, and it just kind of stays there. It's not darting around, and it's not doing anything.
And it could be easily confused as a plane. I mean, honestly, the lights on the plane, that's the biggest thing now. Since there are more recordings of it, and less people are making claims about it, more than likely now, if you see something that is an actual UFO or a UAP, there will be more evidence now if you can get a decent recording of it, because 30 years ago you didn't have a camera that's as good as a fucking
iPhone 10, a Galaxy 21.
You didn't have that kind of camera back then, and now you do.
And now all of a sudden the reports are dropping off and everything else. It's just nothing's adding up across the board. Nothing adds up from the civilian point of view. Nothing adds up from the military point of view. It's just there's just not enough bleeding into each other to give any kind of solid evidence. It's almost like the difference between like flat earthers and then normal human beings.
Fucking flat earthers, dude.
Arguing back and forth where it's like, no, I know for a fact I saw blank, and it's like, okay, well, what did it do? It did this. Prove it. You're falling into that realm over and over and over again.
Thank y'all for joining the Broology Podcast. Be sure to follow us on Facebook. Give us a good review on iTunes. You know, we're on iTunes, Spotify, Pandora, all mainstream platforms. Just check us out. Leave us a review. Give us 5 stars.
We're in your mom's Rolodex. Just look in there. Trust me, we visit her all the time.
Yeah, I made her a mold. I made her a molded dildo of my dick and sent it in the mail last night. But
did she ever pay you for that? By the way,
no. Hey, I will be doing that for money. You know, if you want to mold of my dick, just give me a few extra. Like, send me the kit. Send me $20. You know, we'll make it happen.
Hey, just a word to the wise. So I got one of those for my birthday one year. After like 4 or 5 years, that mold shrinks, so it doesn't do you any favors.
That's what you want us to think.
That's exactly what I want you to think.
But anyways, thank y'all for joining us. And again, if you have any topic you want to put out to us, and we'll check it out, send an email at broologypodcast@gmail.com, or either hit us up on Facebook. Hopefully, I'll be having some merch come out soon. Feel free to let me know if you got any ideas or if you want a shirt. I have a few shirts that I can order of the old shirt, but I'm planning on making new shirts with a different company because it was a little more pricey than I anticipated. And I don't want to end up having to charge like $30 for a shirt. So besides that, again, thank y'all for joining us. And we'll see you next time.
Yo!